I am Dr. T.S. Ravishankar, holding charge of the Directorate Epigraphy, Mysore. And our epigraphy branch is one of the important wing of the ASI. And we have a large number of inscription, nearly 1 lakh stamp pages copied from almost a century, starting from 1886 to this day. And it's a very rich treasure house. The original stamp pages are within the copied from length and breadth of the country, and they are in different languages, scripts, and a part of them are so far published, and many still material is lying with us. It's absolutely essential for the students of history. They should try to know what is the antiquity of writing. It's as common, we breathe air, water, drink. So a script is such, everybody should have the knowledge, at least a broad background of the antiquity of writing, not only in Indian context, but also in the world context. As we are aware, more than the invention of fire or wheels, the greatest contribution of mankind is the art of writing. Man has been in existence since millions of years, and he lived without the knowledge of writing for many millions of years. It was during the Upper Paleolithic period, that is 10,000 BC, man started making efforts to express himself and manifested itself in the form of painting, which mostly found in the caves and also in crude art objects. Later, he relied on pictographic form of writing to express himself and communicate his ideas and thoughts. Subsequently, this led to the development of ideographic form of writing. Further, it developed into phonetic form, and ultimately it succeeded in the alphabetic form of writing, which is followed even to this day. And many languages existed, and unfortunately, since there was no script, they died at a very nascent stage. Some developed to a smaller extent, and they did not continue. But we should remember that wherever great civilizations flourished, there existed languages and script. In ancient world, hieroglyphic, cuneiform writing were very popular, and they were the major scripts found used in different continents. Great civilizations like Egyptians, Sumerians, Mesopotamian, which flourished in 3500 BC, employed these scripts, and many scripts branched off from this. There are two branches which have made. One is the archaeological method of looking for things, and another literature. Some scholars would like to take the antiquity writing slightly earlier, like Anuradhapura excavations at Colombo, Ceylon. It has, the scholars take it to the 5th or 6th century, 4th century BC. Now let us try to understand the antiquity of writing in India. For us, the earliest script so far not successfully deciphered is the Indus Valley script. Now large number of scholars, indigenous and foreign scholars, have attempted to decipher, but unfortunately unanimously accepted reading or decipherment is not has come to us so far. But still the effort is on to decipher the Indus Valley script. The Indus is the beginning, and which made its appearance in 2500 BC, that is the matured period ends around 1500 BC. But there is a very huge gap between 1500 BC to 300 BC. Unfortunately, no epigraphical material, no inscription has come to light, and the only inscription that has come to light are the Ashokan rock edicts, and there are some few inscriptions in Brahmi, different regions. But we are not in a position to take it beyond 3rd or 4th century BC. Even the engraved coins or the coins with legends, earliest coins also we may take it to 4th or 5th century. See the Upanishads, the Vedas, Upanishads, all they refer to the writing, lipi. Such terms occur in the literature also. But unfortunately, in the earlier days, particularly the Vedas were transmitted orally, and they were not committed, they were not put into writing. That's how all the Vedic literature has come in that form. Similarly, from an archaeological point of view, some excavations conducted at Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka has yielded some inscriptions which they take it to 4th century BC, but nothing is known. And Vikram Kol is a place in Orissa which has some semblance, and the scholars say that is interlinked between the Indus script and the Brahmi, but Dr. Ramesh and other epigraphists have disowned, they have not agreed it as a script at all. So, with this background, still we have to wait for the spade of the archaeologists. When some earlier inscription come to light, we may take it earlier to that. But for all our practical purpose, Ashokan relicts which has come in every part of India, that is only the important inscriptional evidence. Ashokan rock edicts or the Brahmi, the script which has come across is fully in a evolved form, and definitely it must have undergone some stages before this evolutionary trend. But we have very few inscriptions which goes along with the Ashokan rock edicts, and there are early Prakrit inscriptions also which are coeval with the Ashokan rock edicts. The antiquity of writing is still an open subject, and it depends upon the further archaeological evidences and epigraphical evidences to bridge the gap, that is from the Ashokan period when we have all the inscriptions and a long gap which exists earlier to that. So, we have to wait for the new evidences which should come forth and see that this gap is bridged. Till such time, we have to look for the spade of the archaeologists to bring some more inscriptions to light. Now, I would like to talk upon the importance of epigraphy as a source of history and paleography. And you know, the word epigraphy is derived from two Greek words, epi meaning on or upon, and graphy meaning to write. Hence, epigraphy is the study of writing engraved on stone, metal and other metals like materials like wood, shell, etc. It is also known as inscriptions or epigraphs. Though engraving is the chief characteristic of an epigraph, there are some exceptions where old writings in ink or rocks and boulders, they are also accepted or epigraphs. A person who is engaged in decipherment and interpretation of the epigraphs is called an epigraphist. Unfortunately, the subject has not received due attention as it should have been. Now, there is a larger attempt is made to include most of the topics in epigraphy in the history also. To understand the early history, ancient history of India, epigraphy is a very, very important subject, and a large number of inscriptions have come to light from throughout the length and breadth of the country, and they have been studied. And now, still a large number of inscriptions are there, they have to be copied from different parts of the country. And very recently, from Bihar, from a place called Basaha, one of the rock edicts, minor rock edict has come to light, and it is a very, very significant discovery in these recent years, and it is a version of the Sahasrama rock edict. Apart from archaeological, this epigraphy and numismatics form very, very important primary source for writing history. It reflects the contemporary society, their economic condition, their political scenario, about the agrarian system, and so many aspects. So, we have a large number of inscriptions from coming from India. Not only the inscriptions are found, even they are found beyond the seas. In Southeast Asia, a large number of inscriptions have come from Cambodia and so many other places. Earlier scholars, they mostly concentrated on the political history and examined all the inscriptions and have given us a well connected history. Now, in this, now we have to see how we can exploit the inscription from different angles. For example, Ashokan edicts, apart from enshrining the dharma and all, it gives the territories which he tried to annex, and it gives about the neighboring countries. So we can analyze the inscriptions from different point of view, either from religious history, political history, economic history, social history and all. The Besnagar pillar inscription is a unique example how Bhagavata cult prevailed at that point of time. And we have an inscription belonging to Satavahana period, Naganika. It enumerates a large number of sacrifices that were conducted and how Vedic culture was in its fore. Apart from mentioning a large number of sacrifices she conducted, it gives a large number of gifts that were given to the Brahmanas. It's very, very important, unique inscription from the religious, from the Vedic literature, point of view. Similarly, the Allahabad pillar inscription, it's one of the very, very important inscription which says about the political annexation which Samsagupta made. We have inscription, Kudumiya Malai inscription, which says about the musical notes and all. And then there are many inscriptions which reference to terms like Karsha Panas, Panas and all. So the coins and terms are also mentioned in inscription. And there are inscriptions which mention about the territorial divisions like Bhuktis and all. The Uttaramerur inscription of Parantaka first says how the elections were conducted and how he made different wards and the qualifications of the members and the disqualifications and all, how he can be elected. And there was a system of ballot system. A young boy was made to pick up the leaf and the selected candidate used to be made member of the ward. So this is a very, very unique instance where you have the democratic setup of conducting election system, and many inscriptions they refer about the punishment that were given and many, many aspects. So inscriptions thus form a very important source to tackle any aspect connected with the economic history, whether it may be social history, religion and all. There is a sense that Indians lack historical authenticity, they are not able to this one, but the Hathigumpha pillar inscription gives in different regnal years the achievements the Kharavela made in different years. Similarly, paleography is very, very important aspect of epigraphy, and it is the evolution of script that is studied is called paleography, evolution from century while. And there was a time the scholars in the beginning they made lot of efforts to collect a large number of inscriptions. Dr. Dani says in the beginning, the last quarter of the 17th century, a large number of inscriptions were collected, and then that was a period when scholars made lot of efforts to collect different inscriptions from different area. And the second phase, where after collecting they try to prepare charts for all the different inscriptions they have collected. So the establishment of the Asiatic Society of Bengal forms a very, very important landmark in the epigraphical studies, not only epigraphy, Indological studies, and they could collectively bring all the epigraphical material and give a purpose for that. In the recent years, the paleography has not received much attention, particularly in the post-independent area. There are many grey areas in epigraphy, particularly in paleography, which we have to look for. Particularly the study of the evolution of Kharoshthi script and all receives much attention. Now, paleography is a very, very important tool. In the absence of a dated inscription, paleography comes to our rescue. In the course of excavation, when we get some epigraphical material along with the stratified level, we can try to assess the period to which it belongs. Another aspect which I would like to say, the problems and perspectives of epigraphy. Now, there is an urgent need to preserve and protect our ancient inscriptions. As citizens and students, we have onerous task of preserving our vast epigraphical wealth. A large number of inscriptions are there, and due to vandalism and they are all vanishing. There is an urgent need to conduct vast epigraphical survey, copy the inscriptions and sensitize public about the importance of the inscription. So now we have in a three-pronged approach to carry on this. We are conducting exhibitions in different areas, urban and rural areas, to sensitize the public, to highlight the importance of our rich epigraphical wealth. Many copper plate inscriptions, just for the value of the metal, they are melt every moment and we are losing. Similarly, the gold coins which are come in hoards, just for the value of the gold, they are just melted, and they are very, very valuable for our historical zone. So there is a great need, a need of the hour is that we have to reach to the rural masses and highlight the importance that epigraphical wealth, whether it is a monument or inscription, is very, very important to be preserved. And there is many quarry works are going on around, and many valuable inscriptions are just lost in this way. So even the temples, now we have only the stampages of the inscription and the original stones have vanished. So there is a great need to educate the masses, to students, that we have a very rich treasure. They have to be preserved and protected for the posterity. The topic which I am going to talk about, the script and languages in ancient India. Brahmi is one of the earliest script that is known to us, and it is from 3rd century BC. It makes a beginning. And similarly, there is another very, very important script which prevailed at the time is Kharoshthi, which also starts almost from 3rd century BC and it proceeds up to 4th century AD. And the one significant aspect we have to keep in mind is Brahmi is written from left to right, whereas Kharoshthi is written from right to left. So Brahmi is a pan-Indian script. Not only it make almost all the scripts what we have at present, it all is the mother of all the scripts, and it continued not only in Indian context also. The script that we find in Sumatra, Bali, Cambodia and all, the script along with the culture and tradition, the script also traveled to the other countries. Brahmi is one of the very early script, and in the Buddhist literature, Lalita Vistara, it makes a reference about Brahmi and Kharoshthi, the script. So Brahmi script, the Ashokan rock edicts, along with the Ashokan rock edicts, some of the inscriptions that have come from north and to some extent from south, they are all written in Brahmi script. It continued from 3rd century BC to 5th century. Scholars like D.C. Sarkar, they say late Brahmi, and there are scholars who have called it Kushan Brahmi, Kshatrapa Brahmi, Gupta Brahmi, like that. But for our point of view, when we record, we say the early Brahmi and late Brahmi. So most of the early inscription which make the beginning, they are written in Brahmi script. It's a very, very simple script, and later we will see how it evolved in different scripts in northern India and south also. So Brahmi is a very, very important script that prevailed in north, not only in north but in south also. But there is an inscription called Bhattiprolu. It is a stupa inscription we have located. It is a casket inscription, and some small differences we see other than North Indian Brahmi. There are some script that we find in the Bhattiprolu inscription also. Along with the Brahmi script from Tamil Nadu, many inscriptions have come to light from caves. This is called Tamil Brahmi. To suit the phonetic needs of the Tamil, they have introduced certain letters in Brahmi which are not seen in the northern Brahmi as such. So that makes a small difference. The tool which they employed in the Ashokan rock edict is a very simple one. Subsequently, during Mathura Kshatrapas, when they made an entry, they brought with them the different tool technique, and that's how the evolution Brahmi takes a different form. There is a tendency towards ornamentation, and it's they become calligraphically very important. So from 1st century BC onwards, there is a trend in the change in the Brahmi. So earlier scholars called Kushan Brahmi, Shunga Brahmi, Kushan, Kshatrapa, like that, but it is not mere dynastics. In subsequent period, many inscriptions belonging to different periods also, they, I mean, not only confined to different dynasty alone, but they are from other private agency also. So in that context, now we need not call it as Kshatrapa, Kushan or Gupta, but we can just call it Brahmi, early Brahmi of 1st century, 2nd century, like that. Later we find the Brahmi developing into in the central India there was a script called box-headed characters. The inscriptions of Vakatakas, they are all in box-headed, and there is another variety of characters called nail-headed characters. They prevailed from 4th to 6th century AD. Box-headed characters in central India, and they not only they influenced the other rulers who are ruling in the central India. Box-headed characters are found in other inscriptions also, and because of mainly their characters, they are called nail-headed characters. From there we find a further progression of Brahmi into Siddhamatrika characters. It's a very highly ornamental type, and it's finds its peak, final development in the Harshavardhana's copper plate. Kutila or Siddhamatrika script we find from 6th century to 8th century AD, and further we find the emergence of early Nagari in the 8th century 8th century, and further it developed into different further we can see the progress in different parts of India. Similarly, as far as the language is concerned, early inscriptions we find in Prakrit language. All the Ashokan rock edicts are engraved in Prakrit. Even the inscriptions that are found from northern India of that period, they are in Prakrit language, and it was the major lingua franca of that period. And subsequently, in 1st century AD or in 1st century BC, we find a slow emergence of Sanskrit. Hathigumpha, I mean Rudradaman inscription is a classic inscription which is written in a prosaic form, and there is a transition phase. We find the influence of Prakrit in Sanskrit inscriptions. Similarly, the Sanskrit inscriptions having impact on the Prakrit inscriptions. So that is a transitory phase which we mostly find in inscriptions of 1st century BC and 1st century AD. That's a phase where we find some influence. For example, in the Besnagar pillar inscription, though it's a Prakrit, Sanskrit inscription, some Sanskrit forms are found. Similarly, there are inscriptions of Sanskrit inscription having the influence of Prakrit. So that continued, and Prakrit as a language, it continued up to 4th century AD, little early in northern in context, but whereas in Pallava period, we find Pallava copper plates, they continue to have Prakrit. For some more early Pallava grants are in Prakrit language. So Prakrit as a such, as a language, it continued up to 4th century AD in North Indian context, and Sanskrit slowly emerged from the Gupta period onwards. Though there are early Sanskrit inscriptions are there, a major thrust, major inscriptions are found in Sanskrit from 5th century AD onwards. So Sanskrit as a media, it continued for a long time, even in the medieval, late medieval and subsequent period. Prakrit, of course, ended in 4th century AD, And even in later inscriptions like Bhoja's inscription, in some of his literary inscription he employs Prakrit as a language. We have early inscriptions of Kannada coming in 5th century BC, 5th century AD, and then Tamil, Telugu, earlier script called, there is a Tamil Telugu script also is there, and from 12th century onwards, Kannada became a separate, having its own script, and Telugu also. Earlier it is Telugu Kannada script, which large number of inscriptions are there. So, Malayalam made its appearance in 13th century BC, 13th century AD, and we find the script like Gujarati, Marathi and all, they make their appearance from 15th century onwards, and there is other important script which we provide is the Sharda script in northern, particularly Kashmir area. We find the Sharda script. Kashmir, Himachal, Punjab and all. Now we have large number of Sharda inscriptions. It's a very, very significant script as far we find. Early inscriptions are found from 8th century onwards, but Sharda as a script continued even in later manuscripts from Kashmir. And further in Himachal area they had this Thakari, Devashesha and other script which are the derivatives of the Sharda. So this is Sharda is one of the major script that we find in made its beginning in it's a development from the Siddhamatrika characters, and it is found mostly in the northern part of Kashmir and all. And another script which we find is in the form of Proto-Bengali, Gaudiya script we find in Proto-Bengali area. So we find a large number of inscriptions from eastern region are in Proto-Bengali, and later inscriptions we have from north, also in Nagari, a developed Nagari we find in 12th century onwards. There is another script called Shankulipi or shell characters which are found mainly in central India and of course in other parts of India also. So this is very, very short inscriptions, and Professor B.N. Mukherjee and his students, they have made attempt to decipher, but a successful decipherment is not made. But this is a very, very important part of this. It is called Shankulipi or shell characters, which mostly are seen from 6th century to 8th century, mostly in central India, and we have some shorter inscriptions coming from different regions. I have tried to give a very, very broad outline about the scripts that were prevalent in ancient, medieval, late medieval period of India. Just this only to give a very broad outline of the scripts and languages for the students. Thank you.